Hello. How's everybody doing? Phantom, good to see you. Welcome, welcome. Hope everybody's having a good weekend. Well, I'm obviously, based in the title, I'm trying again to make a game. Something that I've wanted to do for some time, but, you know, finding time and sufficient motivation is hard. You're getting used to life with glasses. I have always been dealing with glasses, so good luck with that. There are certainly annoyances at times, but I'm not so sure if I find those annoying enough to try to go through like eye surgery, because I know the eye surgery is pretty good, but there can be issues. And I'm like, I don't know if I want to take that risk when it's minor annoyances. Was it always this clear? That is a common experience, honestly. One of the best references to that I know is actually one of my mom's friends, I guess, went a really long time without glasses. And she eventually did get glasses. And then it wasn't until then that she realized that trees had like individual leaves. Like they were not just a blob of green, but you could actually identify individual leaves. This was probably not in like her teens or 20s, but you know, like sometime she was old enough to probably supposed to have realized this about trees, but her vision was so poor that it was just one blob, and then eventually got glasses. Like, oh my god, I can see shit. So, yeah. It was not, in fact, a rendering issue. Though there are certainly some games that do stuff that's like, yeah, that just looks like what happens without my glasses. That's definitely something that occurs. So of note, the background music this time around is just YouTube's creator music. So I have no idea what's going to come up. I have tried to limit it to a mood of dark and a genre of dance and electronic and whatever. So don't blame me for weird background music. It's not my fault. It's YouTube's fault. And there's not really just like a player. So I don't know what's going to happen when it reaches the end of this page. I guess I could extend the page to 50. Ideally, it'll just keep going. There's more than 50. Well, anyway. Regardless. So last time I tried to do some kind of game dev thing on stream, it was more about like a narrative sort of thing, which was not a bad plan, but I quickly realized after the fact that I'm not well suited to significant writing. It's like authoring is not my bag. It was too, I have lots of sort of broad ideas for scenarios, and those things I think work well in situations of like translating them into role-playing games with people. It didn't really pan out to me just like trying to sit down and write. So we're changing tactics. Another challenge that has consistently been the issue for making a game is I have an RL friend who we would like to make a game together. And that is still the case, and I have invited him to contribute as much or as little as he wants to this project. The issue is that, like, when the two of us are sort of, like, simultaneously trying to partner on it, both of our sort of distinct issues of finding time, motivation, and, like, you know, stick-to-itiveness, consistency, and, like, you know, all of those things to work on the project compound on each other, and we end up doing less work rather than filling each other's gaps and doing more work. So This one, I am just going to try to sit down and I'm trying to champion myself with no reliance on my friend's help. If my friend chooses to help, that's great. If not, we're going to see what we can do. The other thing is that I am going to try to make this a habit. A big part of what there's a few things that motivated me to try again or try this specific thing. One of which is because I have recently been successful in like building a habit of doing some strength training every day. So like it was a little bit of a proving to myself that I can build a habit, and building the habit is important to sort of maintain something. Like having a schedule, having it on a pattern, having it as a habit is helpful. And so I'm going to try to do this every Saturday. That's going to be the goal. Because Saturdays, I didn't work today. I'm not worked out. Ideally, I can then spend 3-4 hours every Saturday working towards a project. At minimum, obviously. If I'm sufficiently motivated or I get, honestly, if I can get over that initial hump of struggling to learn the tool set, then I may find myself far more motivated to keep going at other times and just put time into putting something together. But I have to get over that hump. And so we're hoping that the habit of doing this on Saturdays might get me over the hump. Now, what specifically am I talking about as far as a game, and why am I currently motivated? So the inspiration, can I have like a bigger inspo? The inspiration is, I guess I could actually just type, worship. Oh yeah, that's actually great. Sick. Hold on, let's knock all of this out. Knock that out. Give me text, extra large. Inspiration is worship. You know what? I can make that XL too. Worship Gunner 2, which is a PS2 game. And it is an arcade naval warship shooter thing. You know what? Actually, let's say it's a naval warship arcade shooter. That's what it is. Now, why this has come to mind right now? One, it does sort of live rent-free in my head because it's an excellent game, and it is not frequently, like, emulated or, like, used as inspiration in new games. There's only one game that I know of that I have also played recently-ish. Was it... Shoot, what was the name? Iron... No, I thought Iron was... Waves of Steel. That's the one. Waves of Steel, released in 2024. No, I played it last in 2024. It was released 2023. And it emulates the game, sort of follows the inspiration, and it is fun. Like, it's good. I enjoyed it. Does a lot of the same stuff. But that's one game. That's one game that did it. And so I also want more of that sort of game. And so the other reason that this recently came to mind is I have been reading, or I should say I read everything that's out, the Arpeggio of Blue Steel manga, which is a good manga, and it has apparently been going for quite some time, and it is still ongoing. And it's a naval manga with ship girls, probably what inspired Azure Lane. None of that's really important. I'm not trying to emulate any of that. I don't give a shit about. Well, it would be cool, but well out of scope of what I can accomplish. But I do love some naval combat. And the thing that they do is like wacky-ass naval combat, where the ships just do weird-ass shit, because they're like, I don't know, alien technology. And so that's the other piece of Warship Gunner 2, is that they take you through sort of like World War I and World War II era naval tech, and then quickly go off the rails. Lasers, lightning guns, like all kinds of alien weird shit, point defense lasers, big laser cannons, like stuff that's cool. Like we like that shit. And so there's just not enough of that. The other piece that eventually I would like to bring to bear is something like Dredge, which has that Eldritch horror ocean, like deep ocean Eldritch shit going on, which is not something Warship Gunner 2 does, but I think would be an interesting tie-in to that sort of arcade genre. That, however, not immediately. Dredge. And Arpeggio of Blue Steel. These are the sort of inspirations. You like that, but air and spacecraft? I also like the spacecraft stuff too. There's a lot of like, there's a lot of parallels between like a naval warfare and also then like space warfare, or there can be, depending on the way the space warfare is presented. I always like the space warfare that like is presented with broadsides and like the sort of naval style combat like vibes. I that's kind of that sort of slow, like punchy, like exchange of blows combat that I find engaging. A big part of why I want to go the naval side is because, one, it removes the need to concern myself with a third dimension as much, right? On the ocean, we don't need to worry about all degrees of motion. Like, that simplifies that a little bit. Design of ships, hey, Scobolts. Design of ships can be a little more simple since, you know, ships. And that's one of the greatest threats to like ongoing progress for this down the line is the attempts to gain assets, because like I don't have that much artistic ability in 3D modeling, and it may be a challenge to get that. Eventually I would include subs, I think. So on that subject, let's talk about like, you know, like the core gameplay is what we need to work on first, right? Like that's what we want. Because that's something that I think was an issue with me going towards the writing, is that I just didn't have the gumption to write that much, and I didn't have any sort of core gameplay to like lean back on and feel sufficiently like inspired by what had come and where to go with that. So let's talk briefly about I'm trying to think of how best to. So the game Warship Gunner 2 is a pretty broad game. It's basic, you know, levels. You go between levels. There's a very large RTS or FPS. It would be a third person, like a arcade third person shooter is, I guess, what you would call it. So you start with a destroyer with some basic gear setup, and then between missions you will have earned some funds that you put into research and development, which allows you to research new parts. And in Worship Gunner 2, there are 1,500 parts, which is a hell of a lot of parts. And then when you get new parts, there's a design space where you actually get to do here, let me Worship Gunner 2 design screen. Let's see if we can get so you get like this kind of a layout in Worship Gunner 2 to like design your ship. So there's like some stuff that goes in the belly, and like you do the engines and the guns and the missile, like, and this is a very excellent part of this game, and I would love to include something like this, but that's just down the road. We're just not going to get to that. But there's, destroyers, cruisers, battleships, carriers, battle carriers, like lots and lots of types of ships, and guns and missiles and rockets and torpedoes, machine guns, all those things in Worship Gunner 2 that I would like to eventually be able to have, right? That would be nice. But obviously we have to start from a beginning. And so the expectation is that the core gameplay is like, effective, fun, third person shooter naval combat. Like that's the core gameplay is that. Like that's the core game. So that's the thing that we need to work on first. Eventually, of course, once we have the core gameplay, then we have to sort of put some variety of scaffold around the game, right? And obviously, so if this is this sort of the unit of core gameplay, right? Let's talk about kind of like games and their structure, right? Let's talk about systems, structures, and how games are set up. So if this is a unit of core gameplay, right? This little square, like a level, then Worship Gunner 2, and what you would like, a very common structure is, you sort of you chain them together, level. Mario, for instance. You just one level to the next level to the next level. That's the arcade style of progression. Additionally, you can put eventually, and what I would say would describe the Worship Gunner is you have a level, and then you make choices, and then you have another level. So like in this, you're choosing design and making changes, and then you go to a next level, and then you make some choices, and then you go to another level, and like that's the layout. And that's maybe eventually, as far as making a game is concerned, that would be sort of eventually where we go. Whoa, I didn't know I could do that. That's fun. But I don't think that's where we're going to start, because that's too many things to craft. So instead, I think what we're going to try to do at first, of course, we just have to get the gameplay. But, so this is how I would describe, how I would describe a like iterative game. Incremental, that's the word. So this is how I would describe an incremental game. Is you have a gameplay, you come back and you make some choices. Well, so you have gameplay, play until you die, right? So like that's, whoops. You play until you die. After you die, you make some choices. You come back, you play until you die. You make some choices, you come back. So these are the incrementals that I feel like are quite common at the moment. Like they're all over the place. I thought of some references to what this is like a bit ago, but now I don't quite remember which ones I would say. But this is probably the layout that I expect I'll go with first, because you just need your like one set of gameplay that you can kind of reuse, and then you just make some kind of a setup of choices and your research and whatever, and then you just kind of play for a while. Well, eventually it will be some sort of forces of, you know, Cthulhu or whatever. But first, that's a good point. So like the first goal is I would split into sort of 3 sections. And honestly, these 3 sections are sort of always what the case would be. So we have player, environment, enemies. So this is like what the game is, right? Like you have a player, you have an environment you're in, and you have an enemies. So I'm going to say that milestone 1. So the first goal, what we want out the like this is not even a releasable thing, but it is a functioning prototype. This is where we're going. Player, we want the player to be able to can move, can shoot, cannon, we'll say can shoot cannon, and like can move camera / aim. Like this is where we're at phase 1. We are so simple right now because I don't really know enough how to use Godot. We are at the baseline learning experience. And then we have environment is open ocean. Open ocean, no terrain, no collision. Like the basic of basic. Open ocean is helpful, no terrain, no collision. And then enemies, we're just going to say that is like static targets. We just want some kind of static targets, and they can die. Like they can be hit and they can die. That's it. That's where we're at. We are so far from trying to do complicated shit like weather, for instance. We can't be talking about how many weapons, what are our options, what do the enemies do. None of that shit. My forever failing in trying to get these things done is thinking too much about the late state, thinking about all of these ideas, thinking about what can be done, what can we do, and like we got to start so goddamn simple. Like we just need something that moves around, that can interact with the world in the way that it's expected to, which is to shoot. And then we need something that sits around in locations and can be shot. That's where we're at. That's milestone 1. We can talk much more about later milestones, maybe milestone 2, you know, maybe the player starts getting more than one weapon, or we refine the shooting mechanism, like mechanics, the environment. Maybe we actually add waves and make it water, because at the first it's not going to be water. And then maybe then we get the enemies to start moving, like then, you know, all of that stuff. But that's all down the road. We're not going to worry about it. We just need something in paper. How long will that take? Maybe it won't take very long, honestly. Maybe it's really easy. Maybe this is exactly the sort of thing that Godot engine is good at, and like this should be attainable. Today, I don't know. But what I do have is I have a tutorial about making 3D games in Godot. So I watched this guy's tutorial on how to make 2D games, and pretty reasonable. That's kind of all I've gotten through is like, but I didn't do very much following along with it because I wasn't really that concerned. I wasn't making a 2D game. I was just kind of absorbing some of the information. So this one we're going to be stopping a lot more because I'm actually going to be following along, because this is sort of the way that I can get some of the information I need of like, what are the nodes I need to use? What am I looking for? How do I get it to interact? Like, how do I add my meshes to my things? Which mesh is it supposed to be? Stuff like that. Why are you hassling me? Go away. So that's where we're at. So we're gonna watch this, and we're gonna see what we can follow along and do. Where? Oh, I don't have my phone in here. Whoops. Okay. So let's
once said,
get going.
You have my sword, and you have my bow.
Okay, I don't need your intro.
Godot actually makes this transition pretty smooth. First, the good news. Godot is built in such a way that most of the concepts you learn when making a 2D game directly apply to 3D. This is especially true for the functionality part of your game. Many of the nodes that you might have used so far actually have a direct 3D version that works in pretty much the same way.
Make myself
so instead of using node 2D,
it is
use node 3D
hypothetically
instead.
possible.
The same is true for area, collision shape, static body, character body, camera, raycast, audio stream player, and so on. Most of the properties on these nodes are pretty similar, and other nodes like timer and animation player don't even have a 3D equivalent. They just work the exact same way as in 2D. And this actually applies to programming as well. Detecting if a raycast 3D is hitting something is done using the isColliding function, just like in 2D. And as usual, you can move a node 3D
get
by
some of this
modifying the
information.
position. Of course, positions now have a third component that can be modified, the Z-axis, but otherwise the procedure is the same. And then the bad news. The bad news is that while Godot tries its best to ease this transition, the world of 3D graphics is vast and complicated. While 2D games work by drawing sprites, in other words, flat images onto the screen,
yeah,
3D
the
games
animation.
combine a lot of different asset data,
Mesh,
such
textures,
as meshes,
rigs.
textures, character rigs, and animations, with the in-engine rendering tools such as shaders, lighting, particle simulations, and post-processing effects. The pipeline for this can quickly become pretty complicated, and it's definitely an area where I see a lot of misunderstandings. But fear not. This video should clear up a lot of the confusion and teach you how you can approach this with as much complexity as you'd like. Creating aesthetically pleasing 3D scenes doesn't have to be rocket science, and we can often rely on the ease of use of Godot to help us out. I've split this video up into two sections. First, we'll look at functionality, how we can design and prototype 3D games in Godot.
That's what we
then
want.
We'll dive into graphics. We'll get a good overview of the many terms thrown around when working with 3D assets.
Some of that.
We'll nerd out on workflows and how to best use these assets in Godot. And finally, we'll learn how to render them beautifully in the engine. This video is meant to serve as an overview, not a follow-along.
I don't need things to be...
back, grab your favorite snack, and let's figure this out. But first, this video is sponsored by Senma. If you want to know more about...
Okay, carry on.
So we're in Godot, and we want to go to the top here and switch from 2D to 3D. And that's pretty much it 3D. For this video, so if you enjoy... Alright, there's maybe a bit more to it than that. Let's create a 3D scene.
3D scene, I have that here.
And save it. We can create something to look at by going plus or hit Control A to add a new node. We'll search for mesh instance and add...
Okay, so it's the mesh instance 3D. That is a thing. Mesh instance is things.
the mesh instance 3D. And here Godot supplies us with some primitive meshes that we can...
Oh, it does have primitive meshes, huh? Mesh. What do we got? We've got like a box, capsule, cylinder, prisms, spheres, toruses. Alas, if it were only so easy. Okay, so if we have like a capsule mesh, it's got a capsule. I mean, obviously that makes sense.
I'm going to choose a new box mesh. And
So he's using box mesh. We'll go ahead and use a box mesh just to stay in. Okay, there we remove it that way. Box mesh. Can I change its? Can I like stretch it? Can I make it a longer box? Subdivide. Well, let's see if he gets to something like that.
We can, of course, orbit this box by holding down middle mouse, pan using shift middle mouse, and zoom using scroll. Just like in 2D, selecting something and hitting F will focus the view on that node. And by holding down the right mouse button and using the vast keys, we can move in free look mode, which is a very nice way to move around, especially when designing levels. And adding shift to this will make a very nice mouse button. And using the vast keys, we can move in free look mode.
I call them the WASD keys. It calls them like vast.
You fly faster. In 2D
Catches me every time.
We normally work with pixels. Moving a node 1 unit corresponds to moving it 1 pixel on the screen. However, in 3D, this is not the case. Instead, it is common practice to equate 1 unit to 1 metric meter. And many assets that you find online will be scaled to fit this. As we can see, this box here is currently 1 meter on all sides. And if we look at the transform, we can see that all of the position data is in meters. And we can, of course, adjust this here, or we can use the gizmos. Just like in 2D, we can switch between select, move, rotate, and scale, or use Q, W, E, and R. Here we can move the node on different axes using the arrows, rotate using the arcs, and scale using the squares. To scale uniformly, simply click and drag outside the gizmos. Holding down Control while translating toggles snapping. And holding down Control while translating toggles snapping.
Okay, Control is for snapping.
And pressing this box here, or T on the keyboard, will switch to local mode. In local mode, the gizmos follow the or T.
Hold on, what was the local versus? It helps that I do know Unity to some extent. Okay.
Will switch to local mode. In local
so
mode,
that's the local.
Follow the orientation of the node, and
local
in
versus
mode, they are
global.
simply ignored.
Okay.
A quick tip is that you can actually bind these manipulations to happen on a key press similar to a program like Blender. To do this, you go to Editor, Editor Settings.
I don't know Blender well enough to worry about that.
We can bind keys to rotate, scale, and translate or move. So I've bound rotate to Shift R, and now if I press that, I can rotate freely, or bind it to an axis, say the X-axis, by just hitting X, and we can now rotate around the X-axis. Clicking will apply the rotation, or right-clicking will snap it right back. Very cool. Now, before we spend hours upon hours making large and beautiful 3D environments, it's probably a good idea to start with a prototype. And a very common way to do this is by using a technique called grayboxing, also known as a level blockout. Here you use simple shapes
that's
to lay
what
out
we
a
want.
rough
I just
draft of
need.
the level. This way you can make sure the level works well before
I have my box. I don't actually need a level. The level goal is just a flat plane.
With its built-in CSG nodes. CSG stands for Constructive Solid Geometry and allows you to quickly make levels and props by combining simple shapes.
Interesting.
And in the end, you can even export your graybox scene and bring it into a 3D modeling program such as Blender to use as a base. So let's try it out. When prototyping, I almost always
searching the information you. Well, it's not so much. Also, hello, but hello, Jay. It's not so much searching the information I actually need, so much as literally starting from scratch. Like I am starting from absolute baseline trying to understand how to use Godot to, you know, make things happen. So it's the tutorial is at an appropriate level for me.
At the top here, we can enable snapping or press Y, and we can configure the snap under transform, configure snap. I'll set this to 0.1, 10 degrees,
snap
and
settings. Okay, hold on.
Items such as Blender to use as a base.
Okay, so I see. So the snapping he's using to make
snapping enabled. So at the top here, we can enable snapping or press Y, and we can configure the snap under transform, configure snap. I'll set this to 0.1, 10 degrees, and 10% scale. Now we can add a new node and search for CSG, and as you can see, there are different ones in here.
We'll just follow suit for the moment until I know what I need.
And 10% scale. Now we can add a new node and search for CSG, and as you can see, there are different ones in here. I'm going to start with a box, and here we can simply click and drag on the handlebars to scale
CSG.
If I hold down Alt, it's going to mirror on both sides. And a nice thing about this...
Wait, what did he say? He held the mirror on both sides?
With the box, and here we can simply click and drag on the handlebars to scale it. If I hold down Alt, it's going to mirror on...
Alt, I see. Okay, so then this is my level box. And then what we need is scale. Okay, so this is just the one side. If we do this, it automatically does both sides. So what we want for our purposes is a big old platform for the moment. That's kind of all we care about. And then if we move this, we can put it so that the top is at the origin plane. Then this we can move to sit above the origin plane. All right, let's continue seeing what the hell he's doing. The
nice thing about this is that we don't need to add collision separately. We simply go to the right here and enable use collision. And now we can collide with it. So let me just make a quick wall here. And let's say we wanted to add a window to this wall. Well, in this case, we can use subtractive editing. So under this CSG box, I'll add a new CSG. And this time, let's make it a cylinder. I'll position this where I want the window. And I'll make sure that it sticks out on both sides of the wall.
Interesting.
Then to subtract this from our box, we simply change the operation from union to subtraction. And as you can see, we have a round window. And we can very easily adjust this to do all kinds of things.
So the cylinder still exists.
Archway instead. I would simply drag this down and scale it. And we have an archway. We can also increase the size on the cylinder to make it look a bit nicer.
Interesting.
Cool. And you can do a lot more with CSG
That's
and Godot.
Quite helpful.
This is enough to get started. So let me put together a quick prototype using these techniques. Oftentimes when making levels, I will go to the top right here and click on the axes to change to that view.
Right.
Just a really nice way to view everything from the side or the top.
Orthogonal if you so desire.
I just click and drag with middle mouse.
All right, we'll let him go to town on that. I'm not as concerned. I'm curious once he gets to player movement. That's the thing.
Now sometimes I will use a CSG combiner node, so that's it plus
CSG combiner.
And this will combine all child CSGs into one. So for static geometry like these rooms, for example, I can take pretty much everything and put it under this one CSG combiner. Just remember to check use collision on that node since everything is now one. And so I've blocked out these two rooms and I've intentionally left them pretty blank. At this point, I'm starting to get ideas for how this scene might look in my head, but for the gray box, I've concentrated on just getting a rough layout. I also know that I'm going to be using tileable assets for the walls, so I've stuck to simple 90-degree angles. Feel free to get as crazy with this part as you'd like, or exclude it completely. Not all projects need a gray box. Now I should mention that so far this is turning into an architectural level, but sometimes you want to work with more organic environments, such as for large outdoor scenes.
Sure.
It is common to use a terrain tool that allows you to sculpt and paint
terrain
to suit your needs.
3D.
Godot doesn't have a built-in solution for this, but there is an extension called Terrain 3D, which is quickly becoming the go-to tool for terrain in Godot. Creating terrain...
Okay, hold on.
is a really fun and creative process, but it's not within the scope of this video. Let me know if you'd like to learn more about
to the internet, because I do think that will be useful later. Train 3D Godot 4. Train 3D Godot Asset Store. Godot Asset Library. Okay, hold on. I'm looking up installation instructions. Install from the asset library. It is listed in the asset. Run Godot using the console executable. Create a new project. Click asset lib at the top of the Godot window. Asset lib. You mean this? Like asset store? Search terrain 3D. Terrain 3D. That's the one. Download. Yeah, and install. Okay, project settings, plugins on. Okay, great. We will use that later. Okay, back to this.
about terrain and foliage in the future. Alright, so to play our game, we need to add a
That
camera.
might make it
So
much
let's
easier to
add
make
a node,
islands and things
camera,
in the
and
ocean.
select camera 3D.
Okay.
I'm gonna
Camera 3D. And yes, okay.
move it over so that it can see our level and rotate it down. Remember, we can always preview it by selecting this toggle.
Hold on.
Cool. Down.
What toggle?
Remember, we can
Oh,
always
preview.
preview it by
I
selecting
see. Okay. Okay, so I kind of know a little bit. So if we make just a regular ass node, create, and we can call this player, we can put the mesh under the player, and we can put the camera under it as well. Rotate this. And then we move it up here and here. Rotate here. Okay, and so that is now sort of does it? Well, I don't actually know if this has it. You know what? That might be wrong.
This
We'll get
toggle.
back to it later.
Cool. So the camera now has a viewer by level.
Right.
And if we now click to play or press F5,
Sure.
it will ask us to set a main scene. We'll hit select current, and our
Yeah, so I mean, we can run it. This is now being run. We can't see jack shit because it's all the same color. Can I actively change your color somehow in here? You don't have a texture of any sort. Well, he's probably going to get to that.
level looks not very exciting, even for a gray box. That's because by default, Godot uses a preview sun and environment in the scene view, but not when running the game.
Oh,
In
there's
fact,
no
we
light?
can toggle the preview sun and environment using these buttons here.
Hmm,
And if we expand, we can even adjust settings such as the sun's direction.
I see.
And we can also add them to our game. So let's simply hit add sun to scene and also add environment to scene. As you can see,
Add sun to scene. What's the environment? Oh, that, like, background. Sure. Sure. Okay, so now we have A world environment and a directional light. I see.
See, this creates 2 new nodes,
Yep.
a directional light, which is our sun,
Makes sense.
and a world environment. The sun we can now rotate to adjust where it's shining from, and the world environment we'll talk about later. And now if we play, we can see our level. But what fun is it if we can't move around it? And for this, we need some kind of character controller.
That's the thing we need. Okay, let's take a look at this. Okay, now we can see shadows and shit. All right. We're getting somewhere.
Like in 2D, creating a solid controller can actually get pretty complicated. And the needs of the controller entirely depends on the game that you're making.
Right.
Is it first person or third person? Does the camera move freely or is it bound to a character? Do you need jumping, double jumps, wall jumps, stairs, slope, sprint, crouch, prone, swim, attack while swimming? It's too much. And this is not a video about character controllers. Luckily, there are a lot of good resources about making different types of controllers available. So instead of spending the next hour programming a controller that might not be right for you anyway, I'll link to some that you can check out. I would recommend starting simple. You can always expand on your controller as the game progresses and you get more comfortable. I've also gone ahead and created a very simple character controller to use for prototyping first-person games. I call it the Proto Controller. You can download it for free. It's under...
Okay, hold on. Do you have links to controller? Character controller, third person, source-like, RPG advanced. All right. We're switching tutorials.
Controller slightly to match the animations of the character's skin. If you want to see how Sophia is set up, you can inspect her.
Weird, that link jumps over to 2 minutes
files
in.
For reference. They are in the player/Sophia skin folder. Okay, let's get started. When you import the project in Godot, you will land on this level scene that contains a completed version of the character template, and you can run the Godot project to try it out.
Okay, I don't necessarily need that,
When creating
though.
a character controller, the first thing you have to choose is which node to use as the root. So when you create your new scene, you typically want to pick between one of two. One is the rigid body node. It's controlled by the physics engine, and you move it by applying forces to it.
Yes.
The other one is the character body node.
3D.
This one is controlled a bit more manually and is known as kinematic body in other engines. In this demo, on the left, the character uses a character body node, and on the right, a rigid body. And so you can see that you can code a character controller with either node, but they feel a bit different to work with. The character body gives you tighter control over how it moves and stops, accelerates,
We want a rigid
jumps,
body.
and falls. You can see, if you pay attention, that the character on the left is snappier, and the one on the right is a bit floatier when it jumps and falls. This is just
We're literally
the physics
looking
engine
for
by
floating.
default. So you
Okay, so this is incorrect. This can we change node? Doesn't matter. Add rigid body 3D. Rename to player. And then we move these over here, and this one goes away. Delete this. Player.
kind of have to counteract that.
Okay.
Then, by default, also, the character body node will not necessarily interact with other rigid body nodes, but the rigid body node will very easily be able to move things and make them stumble around. Those are the main differences. Back to our empty scene, we're going to start by creating a character body 3D node at the root that I'm going to rename to player 3D. And then, as a child of it, the first thing to add is the character skin to have the proportions for the collision shape. So, expand the player folder, Sophia skin, and click and drag the sophiaskin.tscn file onto the scene. This will create a copy of the character. Now we have to add the collision shape, so let's select the player 3.
That makes sense. So where I just have a mesh at the moment, we would need the entire system that would make for the ship in the future. But for now, this is probably fine.
3D and add a new collision shape 3D node. This will define how the character collides with the environment.
Okay, so we need then a collision shape. 3D. And is he putting that just under
now,
the
if
player?
you click the shape slot in the inspector, there are quite a few collision shapes to choose from. Spheres, boxes, capsules, cylinders, and they all have their advantages and disadvantages. In 2D, it's pretty common to use box shapes, but in 3D, not so much, I think. One reason is that if you don't rotate the box with the character, it's very prone to getting stuck in wall angles like this. If you rotate the box with characters, the sharp edges can end up hitting something when the player doesn't expect. Another reason is that when you have slopes, as in this example, is the angles of the box that are going to collide with the slope, making the character float in the air. With a cylinder, thanks to the round size, the character is going to bump off corners pretty well and slide against them.
Capsules, I think, are pretty common
slopes,
to use.
However, just like with boxes, the character is going to be offset and float in the air, even if you make the cylinder pretty small.
Current purposes.
However, when walking off a ledge, the cylinder ensures that the character is not going to start moving down as you walk on an angle. With a capsule, thanks to the round bottom, the character is going to stick to slopes pretty well. Of course, if you stop and you don't have code to angle the feet to match the slope perfectly, the feet are always going to float a bit in the air, but it's not as bad as having the entire character offset, which happens when using box shapes. Also, when you walk off ledges, the character is going to start moving down a bit, which can make the effect feel a bit more natural compared to using cylinders or boxes. Now, of course, the shape here is really big, so the character can end up floating in the air, but you can narrow the capsule to avoid this. Back to our character scene, we can create a capsule shape. So with the collision shape,
we're just using the box because we're just working with a box.
New capsule shape 3D
box time.
And by default, it's going to be a bit low compared to the character. So I'm going to move it up.
Where is
using the snapping feature, and I'm just going to use the handle on the side of the capsule to make it thinner, so that we don't get that effect too much where the character feels like it's off the ledge and floating in the air. Now it's time to save the scene, place it in a level, and we can get working on the camera. So
I'm
going to save it in the player directory as player3d.tscn, create a new scene and a 3D scene at that, where we'll place the level I've prepared for you and the 3D character. So first the level, there's one prepared in the level folder that you can click and drag. It's called level.tscn, so you can drag it into the scene like this.
I see. Okay. So that was my issue. So this has been done incorrectly. So we want a new scene. And we want this to be... This is very kind of strange, because this is saved exclusively under this. Can I save this as... Save branch as scene? So can I make this a player dot... standalone scene? Yes. Okay. Can I open this? Open an editor? Yes. Okay. So this then I have now the player, which also this collision is wonky now. Close enough. Did I misspell? What did I misspell? Is it in the title? Oh, so I did. Thank you. Fixed it. Okay. So that's one thing that's a little bit odd that I'll have to... This is an aspect that I have not used in Unity that I probably should have. Unity calls it something different. They're like... what do they call it? Because you can save... like objects that you have made sort of as like blueprints to be used elsewhere. And you edit one thing and then it edits them everywhere. That's a thing you can do. In this one, it says scenes. And I'm going to need to get used to doing that. Prefabs. That is correct. Unity calls them prefabs. And in this, they don't use that terminology. It's just scenes. And I just have not been one to use prefabs because that's not tremendously relevant to what I've been doing up to now in Unity. So, but that's fine.
And this will be useful to test the character controller.
Right?
That you can drag and drop, this time directly onto the level scene to place the character at the start. We're going to code the character in 5 broad steps.
Okay,
First,
camera,
we'll code the camera because
movement.
3D movement depends on the camera angle. Then we'll code the character's ground movement. We'll hook up ground movement to the character model.
That I don't
We'll code
need.
the character's jump and fall. And finally, we'll hook up the jump and fall to the character model.
I also don't need jumping and falling. But
Now, we can save that.
the movement that
add
I'm
to
going to
root
want is going to be
folder. I'm
different
gonna
from
call it, I don't know,
his, but at least we can get sort of the
test.tscn.
premise
This
and we
is
can potentially
scene to test the
extrapolate.
character. And then, of course, if you try to run it by clicking the Run Current Scene button, you're not going to see anything because there's no camera yet. So head back to the player 3D scene and we'll add that next. For the camera, we're going to use a setup where we not only have the camera node, but it's parented to what I would call a pivot. It's going to be a point attached to the character's head that makes it very easy to move the camera as if it was on a crane. So in the player scene, let's add a 3D node that we're going to place in the character's head. And I'm going to rename it camera pivot. And then...
Okay, so... Node 3D. We just used a plain Node 3D. And so this is our camera pivot. And then presumably this camera 3D is going to go in there.
As a child of it, add a camera 3D node. Okay, so
the pivot for us is going to be positioned, I mean, honestly, at the middle. It doesn't have to be the head. The middle of this is fine. And so we essentially have got that.
It's rotated face away from the character, so I'm turning it 180 degrees. And then I'm going to move it back,
just move it.
Let's say 10 meters, like this. And now when I select the camera pivot and rotate it around the x-axis, the camera moves along a circle that's 10 meters away from the character. So I'm gonna
so we're using the camera pivot
so that the default view is the camera looking
to
down
rotate
at the character.
Yes.
And a good thing about that is that anytime you can select the camera 3D node, go to transform, and you'll see that only the Z value is changed to minus 10 meters. And so you can drag this slider to make the camera closer or farther to the character. And so you could animate this value to create.
I see. Okay, so let's follow suit with what he's done. So his goal was to rotate it in such a fashion that it is pointing directly at... Okay, so the rotation on this should be 0, right? Oh, no, okay. So that's straight. Our dimensions are so far off of what they need to be eventually, but we're not going to worry about that because we're just trying to understand how to make these things do anything. And so what is then the easiest way to... So he's just pointing it directly at our mesh. How did he get that so that it's like that?
A zoom effect in code. Time to code the made camera.
How did you point that like that?
And
Hold on,
a
go
good
back.
thing about that is it's gonna moves along and rotate it around the 180 degrees. And then I'm gonna move it back,
I see.
Let's say 10 meters.
I see. Okay, he did it. That's much easier than what I'm trying to do. Okay. Okay. So this he just 0, -10, 0, and then right out of the gate to get it higher up, he put it up there via rotation. Okay, that makes
like
sense.
This. And now when I select the camera pivot and rotate it around the x-axis, the camera
I see. I
moves
almost missed
along
that.
a circle
I see.
that's 10 meters away from the character.
That's
So
not going to make
I'm
sense
gonna,
long term for
move
what
it
we're
up a
trying to
bit
do,
so that
but
the default view
that's
is the camera
okay.
looking down at the character. And a good thing about that is that anytime you can select the camera 3D node, go to transform, and you'll see that only the Z value is changed to -10 meters. And so you can drag this slider to make the camera closer or farther to the character. And so you could animate this value to create a zoom effect in code.
yeah, that makes sense.
Time to code the camera.
That will
I'm
make
going
sense
to
also, I think,
mark
for what
the
I'm trying
camera
to do.
3D and pivot as access as unique name to quickly access them in the script, and attach a new script to the player 3D node.
Okay, hold on a second. Go back to what you just said.
A zoom effect in code.
Access is okay.
Time
Here's
to code the camera. I'm going
access is
to
unique.
mark the camera 3D and pivot
Both.
as access as unique name to quickly access them in the script,
Right.
and attach a new script to the player 3D.
Okay. So player, you know what? Sure, I'll add the 3D so I'm not. So then we attach a script. Player 3D.
The node. So you can click it. Make sure that you use the empty template to start with no code, and
Empty
click
template.
create.
And then we want this to be in scripts. Create.
Let's get
'Kay.
coding. We're going to do it in 4 steps. First, we need to calculate how much the mouse moves on screen. Then
Perfect.
we'll convert that into a 3D rotation. We will add code to only rotate the camera when the mouse is in the game. And
I love
finally,
this.
we'll
This is
add
exactly
a
what I
string
need.
arm node to prevent the camera from penetrating the walls. First,
that
we
won't
have
be
to
an issue for
calculate
me.
how much the mouse is moving on the screen, and for that we use the unhandled input function. Now, before we define the function, it's always a good idea to define a variable to control how sensitive the mouse motion is. So I'm doing that there.
Yeah. Where did you get?
Before we define the function, it's always a good idea to define a variable.
Okay, so this is one of those things. This is a slight sidetrack. Also, I should give this a thumbs up. This is a sidetrack, but I've had to do a lot of coding tutorials in my time for school and job and whatever. I still don't like coding. Here I am again. It's always one of those things that's like hard to decide if it's better if you actually sit there and like see someone type something, like here I'm typing out the thing that you need, or because like this, he just copy pastes it in, and it's like, where the hell did you copy paste that in? Like where did that come from? Why is it called that? Exporting group camera at export group. Okay, at export group camera, and then we at export range 0.0, 1.0 var mouse sensitivity equals 0.25. This colon equals, I'm not entirely sure why it's a colon equals. I saw another tutorial talking about So this is one of those script things. So Godot uses GD script, which is its own script, which I am going to call goddamn script. And you can leave your variables sort of untyped, and it'll figure its shit out. So it's casting it as a float. And so is that what that colon is? So if I specifically say float, are you going to like, oh, I could probably just make it FLT. Float. Sure, whatever. It doesn't have to cast itself, and it's generally better if you just cast them yourselves, because it doesn't have to ever think about it, and you'll get errors when you've done something wrong. Because I think that's what this was about, was casting it. I don't know why. Maybe just having it as the colon equals is enough to tell it that it's got to be a float. Just as a script thing. I'm just going to be explicit, if I'm honest.
To control how sensitive the mouse motion is.
Definitely want that in the settings.
Then we're going to use another variable to keep track of the mouse motion, because
obviously
we calculate the mouse motion in one of Godot's input functions, but then we need to move the camera
put it into a variable,
a processing function like physics process, to synchronize with the physics and
makes
use
perfect sense.
The delta time to make it time
Fortunately,
dependent.
I'm not clueless
So
on coding.
I'm creating another variable.
Okay,
that
input
will store
direction.
This mouse motion we
vector
get
2.0.
in the unhandled input function. Next, I define.
Okay, so let's continue following suit. This is getting further and further off screen. it's fine. Can we? I'm trying to keep it on screen. Var camera input. I don't know what sort of convention he's following here with this underscore at the beginning. That feels very convention-y to me. Vector 2.0. Okay, so presumably this is then a vector 2 variable, and we're setting it as 0 at the beginning, and then we have a function that we're writing of unhandled input event input event void colon. Yep, okay, we've got his thing, and then we've indented
and check if we have a mouse motion that we want to use for the camera. I use the following condition for that. If the event is a...
Okay, so we have a new variable. Var is camera motion. Hold on. What is this? Oh, is this to minimize? Whoa! Whoa, help text. Whoa. Okay, so his put that there too. Interesting. Camera motion. Var is camera motion, colon equals parentheses. That's not a parentheses. Parentheses. Event is input event mouse motion. And input dot get mouse mode equals input dot mouse mode captured.
A mouse motion.
Okay, let's now that we've typed that, let's listen to what he's saying about it.
A mouse motion that we want to use for the camera. I use the following condition for that. If the event is a mouse motion, the mouse just moved, and also the mouse is captured in the window.
Got it.
This is when the mouse cursor disappears and is bound to your game window. This makes sure that the camera will not move when the player is going to their web browser to check something or talking with someone in a chat.
Makes
Then,
sense.
we do have a camera motion. We can store the
camera
input
motion.
direction in our variable. We use
Okay, if is camera motion, right? Then we camera input direction equals event.screen relative times mouse sensitivity. Okay. Continue explaining.
store the we do have a camera motion. We
Right.
can store the input direction in our variable. We use the events screen relative property for that, and we can multiply it by the mouse sensitivity to make the motion slower or faster. To rotate the camera, I first get a
Okay. So this function constitutes the whole thing, right? Based on the and this is separated out strictly by the tabbing because scripting. So function unhandled input event void. If is camera motion, then we set the camera input direction. Interesting. I would not call this quite this way. Because this is a function of unhandled input, but then we still have an if, and we're setting this. So this feels like this should be for handled input, right? Am I reading this wrong? We have a variable, and we are setting it to... Yeah, we're doing both. Because is camera motion we set here. And so if we have motion and the motion is captured, then we are setting, because then we check is camera motion. And if that's true, which is true in this case, then we are setting this variable to this value. So this is not just, so this is not, I'm going to keep it for now. I feel like I should, like, I don't understand why he's titling some of this the way he is, and I'm trying to understand if that's a convention I should follow or if it doesn't matter. It's like these underscores at the beginning. And so the function is that we are setting camera. You know what? We'll see what he does next.
Camera pivot node in the scene, because this is what rotates the view around the character. And then in the physics process function, I'm going to...
Okay, hold on. At on ready. Ready. There. Camera pivot. Colon. No. Okay, and so here we're using our percent so that we can call it easily. Camera pivot. Okay, so we are casting. So yeah, here we are making a variable camera pivot of type node 3D that contains our camera pivot. So now we can just use camera pivot.
Rotates the view around the character. And then in the physics process function, I'm going to...
Okay, so then here we are escaping from this, and so we're setting up a new func. Physics process. Oh, I guess the underscores that we don't have. Okay, we don't control that name. That's a set name. So we are utilizing a pre-existing unhandled input. That's probably why it has the underscore at the beginning. That's a built-in unhandled input Event, input, event. I see. Okay. I see. And so then we have our physics process, float void. We have camera pivot dot rotation dot x plus equals camera input direction dot y times delta. What happened to my music? Was this the end of the page? It wasn't the end of the page. It might have been the end of the page previously. Where the hell are we? Yes. Okay. Next page, we'll just jump page. Start at the top with our random ass music. Thanks, YouTube creator music.
First, rotate the camera pivot around the x-axis. For that, I use the vertical component of my camera input direction, multiplied by delta to make it time dependent. So in the game view, this is equivalent to doing this, to turning around the x-axis. And then we need to limit that a bit, because if I take two views and set one to be the camera preview, what you risk doing is rotating so much that the camera ends up rolling over the character and inverting the view. So we don't want that to happen. So back in the code, I clamp the X rotation between two values. Minus pi divided by 6 is equivalent to minus 30 degrees, and pi divided by 3 is equivalent to 60 degrees. And this limits the up and down rotation. Next is the horizontal.
Hey, Beethoven, how's it going? I don't like coding. I've always sort of been able to do coding, but I don't like it. but I must subject myself to coding to some extent because I'm trying to make a game. A thing that I have said for years and have failed every time I have attempted because I don't have the consistency to keep at it and to accomplish it, which I simply keep trying and change a little bit to try to make it easier for myself. The new plan is to try to do it every Saturday on stream, because I take up a lot of my time is taken up streaming, and it's a thing that I don't want to not do because I like streaming. And so my goal is to use my Saturday streams as a way to have a habit and a time frame that slow progress will hopefully be managed. Even if it's just a couple hours every week, hopefully we'll be doing things. And so yeah, we're starting so from scratch on like how we're getting this game going. So I'm very quickly realizing that the way he is behaving with this camera is not quite what we are going to need the camera to do. Which is fine. We'll still do this, and then I should be able to understand how to shift that into what I need. So the main thing is what he is doing with the camera is that when you raise the camera continues to look down at the character. And so like as you move the mouse up, the camera moves up and it points at the character. I don't think that's what we are going to want to do, because the target of our focus in what we're doing is not aiming the camera at the down here. The target of our focus will be looking up and then around outside. So we kind of have to invert some of the numbers and stuff, but that's fine. This will at least get us a starter script that is sort of pointing us in the right direction. And so he's got camera pivot dot rotation, oops, rotation dot x equals clamp camera pivot dot rotation dot x, comma, too few argument. I'm getting there. Okay, so we have negative pi over 6.0, comma, pi over 3.0. Okay, so let's understand a little bit what's going on here. So we're setting camera pivot to the direction times delta. But then we're clamping, and clamps the value, returning a variant not less than min and not more than max. Any values that can be compared with the less than and greater than operators will work. Okay, so this just takes its own clamp. So it resets it to whatever. Essentially, it checks it. If it's outside of the bounds of these two clamps, then it simply returns the edge condition. The edge value, I should say. And then it puts it right back into the value, which makes sense.
Limits the up
that
and
makes
down
sense.
rotation. Next is the horizontal rotation around the y-axis. So for that,
Oh,
we,
damn, Beethoven.
take the camera
55
pivot's
void orbs is
Y
actually
rotation.
really close to getting to 64. I haven't had a new fan bit to make. Not a fan bit. What did I call? What are those? Chat bits. No, chat bits. Chat bit. What were they? Community bits. Community bits. That's what they were. I haven't had to make a community bit in forever. If you come back 9 more times, I'll actually. Who was the last? I think Scobalts might have been the last that I made. I think it was Scobalts. And so this would be a new one. Let's see, is Beethoven in the I don't think Beethoven is in the Discord, which means I would have to find some alternative means of obtaining references, but we can manage that. Okay. Okay, so now we're doing the Y.
And in this case, I subtract the x direction of my camera input multiplied by delta.
Okay, so this is kind of annoying in the way these numbers, or like the directions combine. So it's Y and X on the input direction. So I think that's like the mouse directions.
X direction of my camera input multiplied by delta. The reason I'm doing that is so that when moving the mouse to the left,
the hella character development. Well, I hope that's. I hope that is good. Growth is good. I hope it has not been a tremendous amount of hardship that has been thrust upon you.
the character looks to the left, or the camera, and when moving the mouse to the right, it looks towards the right. Finally, each frame, we want to reset the input direction to 0. Otherwise, if you move the mouse a bit and then you stop touching it, the camera will keep rotating. We are almost ready to test, but remember how we have...
Okay, hold on. So something I immediately am realizing. Vector 2.0. Something I'm immediately realizing that is not included in this, which may be something we would want to do, is a setting. So he had put in this for mouse sensitivity, right? He accommodated mouse sensitivity as a variable, but something else you would likely want to include would be options to invert the Y or X camera directions, right? Like that's a common allowed setting, and so it would likely be that you would have to pull that in here from a setting, like wherever you set that, and then you would multiply, like that would have to be a positive one or a negative one, and then you would multiply into your rotations as appropriate for the settings. But I'll come back to that, I guess, in a minute.
We'll keep rotating. We are almost ready to test, but remember how we have some code to check if the mouse mode is captured? Well, this is not automatic.
A lot of good. You picked up keyboarding and drawing and wrestling. Definitely became a... Well, that's awesome. You say keyboarding. Do you mean keyboarding as in, like, piano but with electric keyboard? Or keyboarding as in, like, the hobby of building keyboards and switches, like the switches that go into keyboards and things? What sort of keyboarding are you talking about with that term? Piano? That's awesome. I have a keyboard. Honestly, that was actually another thing that was potentially up on my list of, like, things to incorporate into stream, because so playing the piano is something that is also in my list of, like, hobbies that I wish I were sufficiently motivated to get good at. So here's my specific challenges with that, right? So when I was young, like real young, I had one of those childhoods where my parents wanted to give me the chance to try whatever things that I wanted to, but also kind of like wanted to keep my childhood fair with my sister a little bit. And so Kappa, she wanted to play the piano, I think. She wanted to play the piano, so she got piano lessons at a young age. And then I was like, I don't know, 5, 7, 8 maybe, like young. And either they were like, well, since she's getting it, you can get it. Or I was young and was like, well, I want to do that too. And so I had piano lessons when I was very young. I then, in school, I played saxophone. So, like, I did music. I spent a lot of time doing music. I was reasonably good at saxophone. Piano, I only did for a couple years. I could play, and then I stopped. After school, I stopped playing the saxophone because I didn't find the saxophone to be that, like, exciting an instrument. Like, I played it in band, and that was fine. There was nothing wrong with the saxophone in band. But if you're trying to play a musical instrument for a hobby, the saxophone is not, like, an exciting hobby instrument, right? The things that come to mind for hobby instruments is, like, the bass, the guitar, the piano, all of which are more like full, rich instruments that you can do, like, full musical pieces and do stuff with. And you can just, like, play around with and do things. Saxophone, you're like, what? There's a real specific sound the saxophone makes, and who gives a shit? So anyway, all that to say, I picked up a keyboard, later on when I was an adult, but, like, I find it really, really hard to be motivated to practice and, like, become decent at it again, in large part because I have, like, the mental experience of remembering what it was like to be capable of playing music and reading music, but I've let those muscles atrophy to the extent that, like, I kind of end up with just, like, this deep frustration sitting at a piano and looking at music and knowing I should be able to read it and struggling to translate what I'm looking at into keystrokes. And that only gets better by sitting and doing really, really boring things. You sit down, you do scales, you do some practice about, like, you just have to actually do the due diligence of practicing constantly. Like, every day we're talking, because you've got to actually get good at it. And it's really hard. I find it very, very difficult for me to try to get back into playing music when I was capable of doing it at one point, and I have to go back to such a boring part of it, and it's just not fun. And, like, I worked all day, right? I don't want to do boring things with the piano. I want to be doing potentially fun things with the piano. But to get to the fun things with the piano, you have to do weeks, if not months, of the boring things with the piano. And I just couldn't do it. Like, it was not, I did not have the spoons to do it. And so that was one that was kind of on my list of, like, I could try to do that shit on stream. Like, learn to play the piano on stream. And so that was one of the things. I never did it, obviously. Like, I just didn't. I never took that jump. I never got there. Who knows? It could still be on the table. Maybe I'll do it at some point. I would have to, like, I'd have to hook the keyboard up to the computer. I'd have to do some things to do it, but it's a hypothetical possibility. The other thing, of course, that I have tried repeatedly to get started doing is making a game. And that similarly is work, right? Like, you gotta stick to it. You have to get through stuff. You have to learn. You have to make mistakes. You just have to put time into it. And that's hard. I don't have infinite time to do these sorts of things. I gotta work. I'm trying to do stream. I'm trying to, spend time with my wife. I'm trying to, like, maintain a gaming group where we play some board games. Like, shit's hard. And so that's here we are. We're making an effort to at least do something that I want to create out of. That's really the thing that ties those together, is I get to points where I'm like, I want to create. I'd like to create. But creating is hard and takes time, and I have to work because capitalism. So, what kind of game? Okay, so let's go back to our my very basic premise board for concept. So the main thing is we're basing this off of largely Warship Gunner 2 is kind of the core inspiration of this that I'd like to do. So, like, this is the sort of game, naval arcade combat-y sort of arcade game is what this was back in the day. There aren't a whole lot of games that are, doing that sort of thing. And so we're trying to take inspiration from this. And honestly, in a lot of ways, at the stage of the game that I'm at, right, starting from the beginning, in many ways, what the game is kind of irrelevant. That's the dream goal, right? But right now, what we need is this is milestone 1. What we need is a player that can move, that can shoot, and can aim with the camera. We need an environment for it to be in, which milestone 1 is just the open ocean. No terrain, no collision, probably not even waves. Ocean is generous. And then we need something to shoot at, static targets that can be killed when shot. those are like the 3 aspects of milestone 1 that we're working towards. I'm trying to cut this shit down to like the most basic slices that we can get to. And so we're working through a couple of these tutorials. So I started on this how to make 3D games in Godot tutorial, which helped us kind of get to the baseline of our 3D environment. We've got our player and then like a game. So what we have is we have a player, which is just this box, long box, approximately ship-shaped, you know, long box. Within that player, we have the camera, right? Camera connected to the long tube, and we have a game. And so we are now then going through this tutorial of how to make a player controller so that we can move the camera. That is the current state of things where we are. Arguably, we could say that we have completed the environment. We have a space, right? We have a square to move about in. That is an environment. All I have to do is essentially just scale this to eternity. And like then there's probably an easier way to just scale it to eternity, but it doesn't matter. That's approximately an ocean. We have our... So that's one step done. Environment, done-ish. We're working on player now. The hard part, essentially. I expect static targets to be relatively straightforward. You just put them somewhere and give them a collider, and then we'll have to set up some kind of signal to exist when that collider impacts with a projectile, and then that signal will turn that thing off. That's what we'll need to do. But at the moment, we're just trying to get our player to camera
so we need
to do
add
things.
some code to capture the player's mouse, and we're gonna let them click the game to focus it and capture, and then press escape to release them.
Okay, hold on. Let's go back to what he was saying.
Move the mouse a bit, and then you stop touching it. The camera will keep rotating. We are almost ready to test, but remember how we have some code to check if the mouse mode is captured?
Yes.
Well, this is not automatic, so we need to add some code to capture the player's mouse.
I see.
We're gonna let them click the game to focus it and capture, and then press escape to release the mouse and be able to close the window easily. For that, you can use the input function, which takes precedence over the game's user interface.
Okay, so we got the input function. Oh, you know what? Maybe if I should... How do I reorganize? Yeah. Can I go? I want... Wait, no, come back over here. I want to move this. What the hell just happened? Oh, God. A scene there. I want 2 layers, and I want to put my text over further. It's annoying that I can't seem to do that. I want to reorganize this entirely. Editor docs, editor layout. want another. Well, whatever. I can't quite get like everything on the stream screen that I want. Okay, so we have func input event colon input event void colon. So abstract base class for input events. So it's okay. So we're making a function. It is an input event type, and it always, I think this is always returns void.
And we're gonna have two conditions.
Returns
the
nothing.
First is if you have a left.
Okay, so if event dot is action pressed left click. Then, oh, wait, hold on. We need another colon. Input dot mouse mode equals input dot mouse mode captured. So if event is action pressed, I see. Okay, so this is an input function, and so I guess it would activate on every input event. If event is action pressed, then we make the mouse mode captured.
Left click
that makes
on
sense.
the game, you're gonna change the input.mouse mode to mouse mode captured. And if the action pressed is UI cancel, which corresponds to the escape key by default, you're gonna set the...
So how do we... This makes sense. Also, why is this not an elif? Shouldn't this be an elif? I'm gonna use an elif. Because these should not be able to coexist, so... Does anything happen with the channel while you were gone? I mean, nothing major. I haven't made any meaningful updates to the model in some time, for sure. Honestly, a lot of it has... the main things that come to mind about the channel are my general frustrations at finding it very challenging to... I'm going to use the term grow the channel, but I don't actually really want to make the channel large. I have recently, for quite some time, been in a relatively slow state of not pulling in new people of any number, not even like low numbers, which of course is concerning, seeing as we do want to maintain sort of like a baseline number of regulars. Many of the regulars, the typical regulars, still stop by. But obviously there's going to be attrition as people have life events, do other things, find other things more interesting. Like, you're always kind of at an uphill battle of trying to keep a consistent, you know, group of folks around to have a good time. And I have been struggling with YouTube. Yo, hello, Leo Orbit. How's it going? Speaking of new folks, well, and that's kind of Beethoven. That's one of the reasons that I'm also trying this as well. Not only does it give me a time to be consistent in trying to get going on making a game and actually making a habit out of it, it does open up the channel for new people who have a different sort of curiosity for streams to potentially come by. And quite frankly, I've had a couple new folks stop by at least to, you know, say hello or comment about the coding and whatever, more so than has been the case for recent streams. So there is some benefit to this, the channel, on top of simply, you know, helping me find time to stream. There's also the fact of, like, you know, and maybe it'll help stream. Yeah, Whitney and Priestess both pop in now and then. I have had, like, updates on their lives now and then, but yes, they have not had as much time to stop in and, like, stay for, like, whole streams and chat and hang out and things. So, like, and that's exactly the sort of, like, attrition that you have to work against, right? As a creator, and specifically as a creator, a small creator, right? That doesn't want to actually be huge, right? I don't want to be a large creator, which does make things complicated in that there are obvious circumstances that, like, I could do to grow, like, you know, all of the typical sort of channel growth tactics, and do this and play games more and make content regularly off stream and record it and upload it and blah blah blah. But, like, that doesn't, I don't want to do that to just try to do, like, the super popular thing. I just want a regular set of folks to stop by and, like, hang out. Is it true if you learn Pico 8, Godot should be easier? I don't know the answer to that, I'm afraid. I am very much just learning Godot right now. I am sitting here with a basics tutorial up, working through it. I am not sure what Pico 8 is. I'm going to look it up because I'm curious. Pico 8. Oh, is that another... It's a fantasy console for making, sharing, and playing tiny games. Okay, so it's like also a very small game engine, you could say. So, broadly speaking, I would say probably, simply because having any kind of baseline knowledge and logic of scripting or coding assists you in every other form of scripting and coding. So I don't like coding. This is not a secret. I've said it several times already. Like, I don't like coding, but I did Java in school. I have done some Python for work. I've done a little bit of Kotlin and blah, blah, blah. Like, it's all about sort of understanding the logic of how objects play together and systems, and that stuff helps. Once you sort of have a grasp of that in any language, it helps just because you understand how the pieces mesh of, like, code logic or even just systems logic. Even if you work through, like, systems engineering, that will also help. Because you can better grasp how pieces go together and then drive, you know, change and whatever. And just some experience making games in something. So, like, if you've made games in Pico 8, that as you try to expand potentially into Godot, you know, the skill of making games is transferable. Like, that, I mean, a lot of my hopeful, you know, skills in making games, because quite frankly, I've never made a full game or even a meaningful part of a game. I have never put out a piece of a game to get feedback or be experienced or whatever. But my hope is that I will have had somewhat of a leg up because I sort of am very introspective about what I enjoy out of games or why games are bad, and I have done a lot of time like creating worlds and experiences in things like Dungeons and Dragons. So I've put forth games and evaluated what people were enjoying and what they were not, right? Those skills are also important to making a game because you have the mechanical side of putting code and tools together so that you have a functional piece of software, and then you have the soft aspect of being able to translate your dreams and desires into an experience that is enjoyable for you and others. So like there's pieces that go together in order to make these things happen. And those skills for both of those things can be learned from a variety of places. That's my opinion, at least. I guess I can't say that with any authority until I have made literally any game, but that's what we're trying. We're trying to do that. Input.mouse mode equals input mouse mode visible. Why doesn't he use an elif? I guess I don't know that it necessarily matters that much that it's an if or an elif, but like these cannot be simultaneously
mouse mode
true.
To mouse mode visible, which will release the cursor and allow the player to close the game window, for example. The left click input action is one I created. I created a few actually, so we could focus on creating this character controller. You can go to project settings, and the input map to
project settings, input map.
See the input actions available in this project.
Well, bro, you just glossed the hell over that. Okay. So input map, he made this action left click. Left click, add. There, left click, left mouse button, all devices. And we give that mouse buttons, left mouse button, all devices. Okay. So now left click exists. So this did not previously exist. So now it does. So this one is this one's like a system one. And so now if we go back here and we try to left click, now we find it because it exists. We'll go ahead and save that. Okay.
To see the input actions available in this project.
Just glossed over that he made left click.
Now it's time to test. So I'm gonna go to my test scene, run it, and when I click the game, the mouse gets captured. I can control the camera.
Okay, so hypothetically, this should work. So if we run this, it does not do anything. Okay, so player script. We have all this here.
I can press escape to release the mouse and close the game window. Nice.
Bro, okay. What is in your
Creating
test?
This character controller. You can go to project settings, and the input map to see the input actions available in this project. Now it's time to test. So I'm gonna go to my test scene, run it.
Okay, so within the test scene, he has a level and he has a player. Within our test scene, we have our collision shape and we have We have our CSG box, our gray box, and we have the player. Why does that not work? Because he has a bunch of these other... Like, we don't need those at the input map, right?
Now it's time to test, so I'm gonna go to my test scene, run it, and when I click the game...
We have a left click button. We have a script. We followed the directions for this script, for the camera movement. Or group camera, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, our game, we run. This is what we expect. I would say that is likely accurate. I have a dramatic leg up in that I have had education in coding. So I don't need to learn coding from the ground up so much as I need to understand what Godot expects me to put forward for it to do stuff. It's like, for instance, we have put together this script, but it does not... Why is it not correctly tying together to our scene? He is kind of glossing over that. What is it about our scene that does not execute this script properly? And I don't know the answer to that. It's like when we run the game, it doesn't like... I can't click into it, is the thing. You know what? Let's... Okay, so we've overridden that. Interesting. Okay. Hello. Oh boy, that name's Vinjaren Galma. I'm sorry, I'm sure I did not get that even remotely correct. But hello. It was going better about 60 seconds ago. Before this script that I have followed the directions in writing simply doesn't do what I expect. And by what I expect, I mean anything at all. I would dramatically prefer it to simply be doing weird things or have something backwards than doing nothing at all. So let's consider, what can we do? So some of the things... Is it Vinga or Vinge? Would it be Vinge or Vinga? And I understand that that's probably very hard to answer in text. Vinge? Got it. Okay. You know, all solid options. I'm wondering if we can try to... So, we're doing some things here that maybe we ignore. No, not these. these, the unhandled input. What if we, what is comment? Okay, that's comment. What if we... No. There's usually a button to comment the whole block. Comment. Indent, unindent, toggle comment. Control K. So, what if we get rid of the protection against unhandled input? Say we don't want to check that the mouse is within the game. That would... I would have expected that to move regardless. This... we... Do I do art or have considered it? Well, it, yes and no. So, in a sense, I do art because I made this whole model, and my model has broadly been my art, if you will. I don't do just, like, you know, hand drawings or, you know, normal art stuff. I have very targeted art, and the style of art is, well, this. I also did my own logo up at the top. So, as well as, I guess, the watermark logo, which is just a smaller version of that. So, I do some art. That's... that teasing with singing is generous. I have sung in the past, never on stream. I tried to record one song that was like karaoke style from a game. I tried once. I found it to be entirely unacceptable based on listening to it back, and thus the dream has gone. Like, that's thus gone forever. Yeah, so this model was entirely made in Unity. So I'm familiar with using Unity, but I did it, I mean, pretty much just with Unity tools. I didn't do any coding to make it happen. I used and pieced things together out of, like, simpler shapes and simple, like, patterns, and that was something I also learned to do on the fly as I was making the model. It started much stupider and more basic, based off of a... Well, so I had used a, what's the character? Shoot, man. What crap? What did I make this out of originally? Oh my god. There's a 3D character builder basically for like models for streaming and other stuff, but it's especially useful for streaming. I think that's where it's got a lot of its popularity. I used a base model from that. I just tore it apart as far as, like, all of the skin and guts and everything came out of it. And I did use Blender in a very basic sense as far as making the various objects that make up the model, and then I took all of those and, you know, put them together to eventually in Unity to make this, just because it was easier for me to learn that than it was to become skilled at Blender, which I'm probably going to have to get better at Blender through this whole ass process as I try to put a game together. So, like, yes, that's also on the docket, but it's also one of the reasons that I'm trying to make a game about, like, naval ship combat, right? because naval ships are, at the very least, sort of a limited set of pretty simplest shapes. It's not like a very organic kind of structure or like requiring a huge amount of artistic whatever. But anyway. Okay, but seriously, why is this script? It's not doing anything. What have I done wrong? Okay, so this did not in any way have any bearing. So why would it not? Yeah, I mean that is essentially where I will be having to go. Like I'll be starting, make some basic sort of ship forms, ship hull, cannons, bridges, I suppose, and like that's definitely what's going to happen eventually. But for now, I just need to... I can't even move the camera, god damn it. I don't understand. Godot used the negative z-axis as its front-facing axis, so you'll want your character to move... Oh, I mean, that's useful for later. Screen relative, just replace it with a relative. I don't know if I'm having problems with screen relative. Where's screen relative? Maybe that's the issue? Can I just replace it with a relative? Okay, so it's just that one. Was that the issue, perhaps? One can hope. That was in the if. So that actually shouldn't be the thing, because I had commented that out and it still didn't help. Damn it. I mean, this has this player... Oh, hold on. Maybe this is the issue. Delete player. I changed the name of this to player 3D. Did that change in scenes? It didn't. Okay, so let's save scene as player 3D scene. Save. So let's get rid of player. Scenes.player. Where on your files, the file being removed are required by other resources in order for them to work. Whomst is using it? I'm sorry, what? Files to be deleted, owners of files, scenes player, scenes game. Remove. Game. Save. And then we drop this in here. So, save. Maybe that was my issue. Maybe I'd screwed up the... God damn it. Wasn't the issue. I am so very out of ideas. Like, what are you supposed to do when the most basic... It's not the most basic, I suppose. It is teaching how to do a camera. What are you supposed to do when the basic tutorial just doesn't work? Doesn't do the thing that it says it's going to do immediately. Player 3D. None of these really matter. It's just we have a player, we have a camera pivot, We have a camera pointed at it, and that camera pivot is supposed to do
test.
something.
So I'm gonna go to my test scene, run it, and when I click the game, the mouse gets captured. I can control the camera.
But it doesn't, man. But it doesn't. They're killing me. I am at a loss a little bit. Extends rigid body 3D. Export group camera. Like, do I need to do something with this? Camera input direction. I mean, we're declaring variables. That's fine. On ready variable camera pivot is the node camera pivot, which is percentage there, so that should be correct. I mean, none of this like matters. It just doesn't even take effect. Okay, you know what?
Escape to release the mouse.
We're gonna move forward into movement. And we'll come back.
Player 3D scene. Let's reparent the camera to a spring arm. So you can right-click the node for that and select reparent to new node. Then type spring arm.
I don't need the spring arm.
The spring arm has this little line that points out there, and this is going to control the camera. The camera is going to be moved to the tip of the spring, and if it has this
actually hold on.
line,
Let's. He mentioned that
basically
he does the spring arm so that it will run into terrain and not like go into terrain. I don't think that's going to be much of an issue for me in what I'm trying to put together. But let's hear him out. Let's just go listen to what he's doing and why he's doing it, and then at least we'll have a better understanding of why. I'm not going to skip it. Boy, do I want to just skip it to get to movement to validate that movement even works. But let's go through this and see what he's doing.
Node for that and select reparent to new node.
You know what? We'll just follow along.
Type spring arm.
Reparent to new node, spring arm.
The spring arm works particularly. So first, let's select the camera and reset the transform and the rotation.
Okay, so we're selecting the camera. And we are... where is the inspector? Hello? Inspector, editor, view. Do I have like a view? Editor docs, inspector. There we go. Okay. Inspector, reset.
Let's select the camera and reset the transform and the rotation. And I'll explain why in a second. But basically, you can see the spring arm has this little line that points out there, and this is going to control the camera. The camera is going to be moved to the tip of the spring, and if the spring collides with something, it's going to move the camera forward along that line. So first, we don't want that line pointing there, we want to turn it to go back. For that, select the spring arm node and go to transform and set the Y rotation to 180 degrees. And it's going to rotate it back.
Yep.
Then in the inspector, the spring length property controls the length of the spring and up to where the camera goes. So right now it's very close to the character. So let's set it to a larger value like 10 to move the camera back. Actually, the camera was a bit far from the character, so I'll choose a smaller value, 8.
Whatever, 10's fine. I don't give a shit.
So now, let me show you what this is going to do, right? It's going to move the camera back to the tip there at runtime. And if there's a wall in the way, it's going to move the camera forward and back along that axis to be right in front of the wall.
Interesting.
So that's why we can move the camera down to the character, and we don't need to worry about its position
I see.
anymore.
So it's just going to kick to the back of the spring.
Reselect the spring arm because we have more setup to do. There's a shape property that controls what collision shape the node uses. Click the empty slot and let's add
a sphere
shape. I recommend it as a
that
default
makes
because
sense.
it's round, it's going to make the camera smoothly go over sharp edges in the environment and prevent clipping.
Makes perfect sense for sphere.
Finally, the collision mask property controls which physics layers the spring arm collides with. In this case, you can leave it to 1 because in this template project, everything uses collision layer 1. You can now go back.
Template project. Okay. He does have the project files downloadable. Let's coding the camera. You find the complete code at different checkpoints. You can use it to compare your code against if you get stuck. And then I mean, I know I freaking put this. Oh, interesting. He actually changes things. He put the limits that he used as variables, exportable variables. Interesting. Ha! he did switch to an LF. Ha! Vindication. That's extremely satisfying, actually. Okay, but you are... Where are you? Okay, download files. Complete project. Character controller, game level, and animated character. This project comes with everything you need to focus on learning about coding a character. Game level... Predefined input maps, Sophia, our 3D animated mascot. In the lesson reference folder, you'll find code checkpoints. Okay, so let's download that. Hey, Z Weaver. I'm fighting with a camera right now. And then we have game dev folder, new folder. Godot learning projects. And then can I open up a new... Can I have 2 projects open simultaneously? I don't know. I mean, I have saved everything, so we could just go ahead and close this, I think, and we should be fine. Godot. Open. Import. Game dev. Learning projects. Oh, you know what? It helps if I put the folder in the folder that I created for it. Paste. Okay, select this folder, import. Okay. So this is the full education folder provided. Scanning the files. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, so we had to disable an add-on. That's probably fine. Oh, we thinking real hard. Okay, there we go. Okay, great. So we have our level, we have our template. How was this structured? What scenes? Level, lesson reference, mode add-ons, have the game. So let's take a step back. Back here, we needed to make one thing. One difference is he did use the character 3D template or character 3D extension instead of the rigid body 3D. Surely that's not gonna be the issue, right?
So the character.
Blah 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 blah. We saw this. Okay.
Scene. We can create a 3D to it to move the hand to. Now it's on the camera, so I'm gonna place it in a level.
Care about that. So what he's doing is we needed a new scene. New scene. And that was our player 3D. 3D scene. Other node. Okay, so this was where he selected a character body 3D rather than a rigid body 3D. Wait, was the issue that no, surely... No, I did do that. I wonder if that... God, I wish I could have 2 projects open at a time. Can I project open project in new... Dang. Because I wonder what would happen if I switched mine to a character body instead of the rigid body. Okay, let's follow the directions exactly, shall we? Character body 3D. We bring in the Sophia skin scene into that, and then we give it a collision shape. Collision shape 3D. We make that bad boy a capsule. We move it up. That's fine. We don't care that much.
Player direct and I've prepared in the level to the scene like this that you can start. Code the camera because we'll keep the character controller that you can drag and drop. It will be level.tsl.
Wait, hold on.
And get working on the camera. So I'm gonna save it in the player directory as player3d.tscn.
Right, so we're saving this as a scene. Save scene as under the player. He did that as player 3D. Player underscore 3d.tscn. Save.
Again, create a new scene and a 3D scene.
That's the easy way to do a new scene.
At that,
I see.
Where we'll place the level I've prepared for you and the 3D character. So,
okay, so just a basic node. We add the level scene. Ba-bam. And then we add the player. Ba-bam.
First, the level. There's one prepared in the level folder that you can click and drag. It's called level.tscn, so you can drag it into the scene like this. And this will be useful to test the character controller that you can drag and drop, this time directly onto the level scene to place the character at the start. We're going to code the character in 5 broad steps. First,
okay, now we need, oh shoot.
we'll code the camera because 3D movement depends on the...
Okay, so then we go back to this one. We attach a script to it. We want this to be object empty. Create. So then we pull all of this in here. That's all of the stuff that we wrote. We save that. We save this scene as test. So this was the test scene that he had created. Test. Save. And so now if we play. Okay. I'm not insane. This did work in his environment. I can escape, and then I can, I can't close. I can't. I don't know how to get rid of it. Somebody help. Okay, so the question is, in this environment, if I do this as a rigid body, does it work? So, what we want a new one. Other node, rigid body 3D. We will toss in our Sophia skin here too. Sure, why not? We need a collider. Collider. Collision. That's it. Collision shape 3D. That's what it was. Collision shape 3D. Oops. Which again, capsule. What? Oh, 3D. There we go. Collision shape. Move up. Thank you. Sure, that works. We'll save this as wait. Oh, wait a second. Wait a second. Okay, that's a piece of this that I don't understand. Okay, hold on. This might be explaining some things. Okay, so we need to save this. Save scene as, I understand, player 3D rigid. Save. Okay, I think the piece that I need to understand then is what's going on in the Sophia skin scene. That's the piece that doesn't jive. But first, let's confirm. So if we take this and we take Wait, why do you have... Oh. 3D. We want to give this a script. Player... No, not collision shape. What are you talking about? Rigid body. Player 3D rigid script. Empty. Create. So we're going to take all of this. We're going to do that. Save that. Now we go to test. We take a look. We get rid of you. Delete. Then we bring in this bad boy. Player 3 rigid. Can't. You know what? Hold on. Delete. We want to pull it. There we go. Now with the rigid body, if we hit play, it also works. Okay. So it's not that's the issue. The issue, I expect, actually lies within the Sophia skin scene. So where is the camera? The camera works, but where is it finding it? That's what I don't understand. Because if we go to Player 3D, we don't have a camera here. There is not a camera here.
The letter into this folder that character. So it will be used this time directly character camera and character model to the camera. Add the root folder. I'm gonna the scene to test the character. You're not going to see anything because there's no camera yet. So
see,
button,
you hold on.
You're not going to see anything because there's no camera yet.
You
so
don't see anything because there's no camera. That's not true. Why does this work? Where is the camera? Where's the camera? Where is the camera coming from? What is happening in this project? Why does that work? Where is the camera? How is this happening? Okay, it has to be because he is putting
not only have the camera node, but it's parented to
he is putting the camera and the camera pivot as part of the player. Great, but I didn't put it here yet. So why is there any camera at all, and why does the camera work with the script? Would it work if I just got rid of the camera in my other project? Because there's no camera here. Player 3D10 3D010 camera scene. Yeah, so this is with the camera pivot, spring arm, and camera 3D. And then presumably you also have a script. No, where? There we go. Yeah, extends character 3D, work group camera. Yeah, so I mean, this is all the stuff. This is baffling. Why Why does it work? This interface is very hard to read, by the way. The fact that you open scripts over here, but your scenes are over here, like, that is very, very confusing. That they are totally decoupled. I will end up writing stuff in the wrong place repeatedly, I'm sure. Player 3D rigid. Like, where... There's no indication of a camera, but a camera works. Okay, well, let's try opening mine and just deleting the camera, because I guess we don't need it. If I just delete the camera. Yes, as expected, you do in fact need a camera. Obviously. Where is the goddamn camera in the other project? Okay, so I can undo. Great. I can put your camera back. Oh, lordy. Things were going so well. They were going so well. Now, here we are, unable to figure out a camera. I am so flabbergasted. My ghasts, they are flabbered. No. No. So within this is the Sophia skin. Within the Sophia skin is not a camera. Within it is Sophia. What did this say? It was automatically imported, so it can't be modified. To make changes to it, a new inherited scene can be created. Open anyway. Within Sophia is not a camera. Where the fuck is the camera? Why does this game work? Why does it work? Why does this work? Why does it have movement? This is not correct. This is not running the scene that I did. What is happening? Okay, this is clearly not my script, because there's running and there is jumping. Why is there running and there is jumping? What is happening? What are you even running? You're running game. I need you to run test. I need you to run this scene. Run current scene. Yes. Okay. This, of course, does not have a camera. Okay. Okay. Now we've got it. Okay, so that was running the game scene, which of course has the player 3D template in it. Not what we've been working on. Okay, we're in business. So within our player 3D rigid, we need to add a normal node 3D. Create, which they want us to put at the head. Great. We then want to give it a child node for the camera 3D, which we're going to leave there actually because we're going to put a add child node. Wait, we can do this way. Camera 3D and reparent to new node, which is going to be the spring arm 3D. And for the spring arm 3D, we're going to make this 8 meters. And then we're going to rotate this back this way. And then we need to
select the camera pivot and
then we need to rename this to camera pivot. And we need the camera pivot to be marked as a unique name somewhere, right?
and rotate it. That's 10 meters away from the character view. Is the camera looking down? Select the camera to -10 meters, and so you can drag this slider to make the camera closer or farther to the character. Time to code this value to create a zoom effect. The camera is them in the script.
Yeah.
Access.
Right. Okay, that's where it was. This access as unique script or a unique name. Okay, so that camera. Oh,
Says unique name. I'm going to mark the camera 3D and pivot
okay,
as.
so he did call it camera 3D and pivot. Okay. So with those added, hypothetically, this may work. It's upside down. It does, however, work. It is upside down. Okay, that's something. So that was testing via the thing that I made. I need you to rotate. Is it Y? That doesn't feel like it's correct. Okay. I mean, I think that's what he had done, the Y. Nope, that is the sky. Okay, there we go. Okay. Yes. So this is doing the thing that we expect it to be now within his project. But why is his project different than ours? What about this was different? So, I mean, at the very least, project settings, input map. So we've got these at issue. Though I did add the left click. We need left click, the moves. Sort of. Ours is going to be different. I'm just trying to get the goddamn camera to work. Christ. All we should need for that is the left mouse button. Okay, so we have, like, we do see those, the camera and the spring arm. We see them present here. We just got a level, and then we got a rigid body. That's what we got. Level, rigid body. The rigid body works with the exact script. mean, is there anything, literally anything else about this? I don't think so. Okay, so let's close this and let's start fresh on... Not that. Godot. Our thing. Okay. So, we have game. I mean, this is equivalent to level, right? Like, it's all... And then we have player 3D. Player 3D. Yeah, and it just doesn't work. Project settings, input map. Left click. Left mouse button, all devices. There, 3D. Within the player 3D. Camera pivot and camera 3D. I am so confused. Test. Add child node. Like world. Barrier. So, CSG is the geometry instance, visual instance, CSG. Box. I mean, it does work in the sense that the player was not falling through the box. Great, right? Big fat box. And then we import player 3D. Test scene save. Okay, so this one falls through. I don't know why. This one didn't fall through. Why didn't this one fall through? Yeah, this one falls down and then lands. Weird. Friggin' weird, man. What an inauspicious start. Got a collision shape. SB box. Oh! I have to check use collision. That's why. Test. Right. I have recreated the circumstance and I... Okay. I mean, this isn't giving me any warnings as though... Or group camera. Is this supposed to be... Well, I mean, this code worked in the other one. Code reference. Yeah. Explores camera, that's fine. Using the camera pivot. Void, UI cancel and left click. Mouse mode. Yeah, left click, mouse mode captured. UI cancel, mouse mode visible. This is just not working. Like, we're just not getting input. Okay, if I take both of these, Control K. So we're just commenting all of that out. And all we have left is the rotation, the direction. Will this... No. We're just not doing it. We're just not... Nothing we do is inclined to change anything about the camera. Like, none of this is stopping it. We're just not hooking on to what we're doing. Why not? Why the fuck not? This is driving me insane. This script worked in the other project. It works. I saw it work. What is happening? I'm gonna lose my goddamn mind. But why? What would I even need to do? I'm gonna freaking lose it. I'm gonna lose it. Ground movement, adding character skin, adding jump and fall. Like, I don't... It doesn't matter if I can't get... Because this block at the bottom should just do a thing every physics process. Node._physics process, called once on each physics tick, allows nodes to synchronize their logic with physics ticks. Delta is the logical time between physics ticks and seconds is equal to engine.time_scale, engine.physics ticks per second. It's only called if physics processing is enabled for this node, which is done automatically. This method is overridden and can be toggled with set physics process. Processing happens in order of... Okay, so, like... I know physics processing is on for this because it fell. Like, I know Player 3D had physics processing. Physics process. It can't be that. It should have that. This should not be that hard. Camera pivot dot rotation act. So did I do something wrong with the camera pivot? No, that's the camera pivot. Camera pivot is used down here, right? Camera input direction. Like all of these should work because they worked in the other. Why doesn't it see it? I'm gonna have to freaking call my friend immediately to be like, hey, can you please take a look at this and tell me why this just does not see what I'm putting in. I don't understand. What a stupid thing to get stuck on. I have a rigid body. I then have the script within the rigid body. I have the camera pivot. I have the camera existing. They should just do the thing. Bro. This is so frustrating. All right, you know what? I think that's going to be enough for now. I'm just going to take my irritation and take a pause and think about it elsewhere. We've been streaming for 3 hours. We've made so little progress. I'm probably going to fight with it later again because I can't help myself. But I'm at least going to try to figure it out without trying to communicate with stream. All right. Well, we've done one. Hopefully, by the time I come back next time, I will have this working. And then we can move on from there. Thanks to everybody for hanging out. I'll be back Tuesday. We'll be playing Hi-Fi Rush again, which is a great game. I've been enjoying that tremendously. Although, yeah, assets are going to be an issue. For sure. I don't know what I'm going to do about that, but right now I just need to get things working. Thanks for being here, Vinge. I appreciate you popping in and hanging out through my frustrations. But yeah, Tuesday, Hi-Fi Rush. Next Saturday, I will hypothetically be back to doing this. I may not though, because now that I think about it, my sister might be coming to visit, which might take a break for the weekend, but which is a terrible way to start a habit. I'm like, I'm gonna start a habit, and then literally the second week, I'm like, I didn't do it. Well, we'll see. We'll see. Thanks for hanging out. I wish I didn't have to leave frustrated, but we'll get to it. Anyway, everybody have a good night. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. At least tomorrow's Sunday. We still got a weekend. And hopefully, I'll see you next time. All right. Bye.